Welcome to chapter 57 of the book of Isaiah, a short chapter and one that is full of pronouns. And unless you really understand the pronouns, which our book, the Analytical Lexicon of the Apostolic Bible, helps with, then you're kind of lost because there are the singular and the plural. And to know which one it is in these places is important because something happened that's interesting with the King James Bible and then the following Bibles after the King James. The King James had, for the plural second person, singular and plural, you and you, but they had thee and thou. So you knew thee was singular and thou was plural, but we lost that into its you in both of them. And you doesn't really help because if I was in one room with somebody and I was listening to people, I was listening to the other room. I didn't know who was in there, and I heard the person talking, and he says, I want you to go to the store. Well, I wouldn't know if he's talking to one person or he could be talking to two people. So that is the situation with the pronouns. But the Greek has them all spelled differently. So when you go into our analytical lexicon, you'll see the spelling and what exactly it is. There's no question about it like there is in the modern translations. So it begins, behold, how the just one perishes. Now, here we know it's a singular, the just one. O is singular, masculine, singular. And no one looks out for the heart. So it's talking about a situation that was going on probably at that time because the people who were in idolatry, because he brings all that out and shows us, and he says, and just men are lifted away. Now we got the plural here, just men. That's, we know this is plural. And no one contemplates. So there's a problem in that the people that were righteous were perishing, being taken away, and leaving the ones that were lawbreakers, basically. For from the face of injustice, the just one, a righteous one, has been lifted away. In whatever way this has happened, people not wanting to hear from the just person and he no longer telling them the things of righteousness, or actually doing violence to a just person, and everything in between probably. So the face of injustice, the just one has been lifted away from injustice. Now we know that when you're living in a society, or I know because I'm in one, the society that's unjust, that is doing all sorts of things that are against God, well, you name it, from living in materialism, diversions of sports and politics, pornography, adultery, fornication, alcoholism, drugs, transsexual, homosexual, on and on the list goes. It's a unrighteous place, and so somebody that is righteous is difficult to live in that situation. And it says, his burial will be in peace. He has been lifted from out of the midst. So eventually, if the person is taken away, then that society is left with the unjust people. But he will have been left, taken in peace with God. But you, now we're in here, you is plural. But you, plural, lead forward here. And who is the you? O lawless sons, seed of adulterers and of a harlot. Now, seed is singular if you looked it up, seed of adulterers and of a harlot, which is a singular feminine. And so you, O lawless sons, lead forward. And he explains who they are. In what you reveled in, and against whom have you opened your mouth? And this is plural, your mouth. And against whom have you slackened your tongue? Plural. That would be the adulterers, the seed of adulterers or lawless sons. And so he's they're reveling in living a life of sin and enjoying it. And with a people like in Israel who were chosen by God to be doing these things, it's a shock to people that are expecting the best, but experiencing the worst. And I see that today within Israel and the Jews. I expect them to be the most righteous people because you see this in the Bible, the things that God has chosen, the people that God has chosen, but yet reality doesn't prove that out. It's just the opposite. So in what have you reveled in, and against whom have you opened your mouth, and against whom have you slackened your tongue, started speaking against? Are you not children of destruction? And that's plural, a seed without honor, and that is singular. And then plural, the ones calling for aid upon the idols under the bushy trees. So the idolatry that was going on was basically took different forms. They had idols that were in the houses, idols that were in temples of some sort, and then they were going out and doing their idolatrous practices in the forests, underneath a bushy tree, in different places where they had these idolatrous practices were being performed. And then it says, one slaying their children in the ravines between the rocks. And we know that that's what they did, that the valley of the sons of Gehenna, the valley of Gehenna, where they slew their children to Molech, mentions that. So they're idolatrous, and the height of the idolatry was slaying their children. That is your portion. This is your lot. Basically, you're guilty. This is what you're doing. To those, you poured out libations, and those would be the idols. A libation was a drink offering. And to these, you'd offered sacrifices, basically to those, and these were the same, the idols. Over these things, then, shall I not be provoked to anger over their idolatrous practices? Of course he's provoked to anger, but they have done this before when they were coming out of the land of Egypt, and they were in the land of, I think it was Edom, and Baal Peor with the people that brought the sons of Israel into these a sexual type of rites, taking them away from the things of God. Upon the high and elevated mountain, there is your bed. So they would go up on these high places, and there they would also commit their these practices, idolatrous practices. So in the woods, on the high places, different places. I have never studied really this idolatry, but I'm sure you could go on a wiki and it would give more information on exactly what they did. I don't really need to know, but and there you hauled to sacrifice your sacrifices. So they hauled animals to sacrifice to these idols. And behind the doorposts of your door you placed your memorials. And this was in the house. So they had little niches that they would put an idol in this niche and do their um, rites within the house. Do you think that if you should separate from me, you would have anything more? Basically, by going to idolatry, they must have thought that they were going to get something better than what the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had to offer them, Jehovah, Yahweh. So they took up idolatry, and they did it until they were taken away into Babylon. And when they came back, they apparently gave up idolatry, but in a way they didn't have physical idols, but they formed the oral law, which was another problem. You loved the ones going to bed with you. Now, it's probably some type of sexual rites that they were doing, and you multiplied your harlotry with them. So the porneon, we have pornography, is a derivative from that love, from that word. Agapisos is love, and that is agape. And you made many of them far from you. I'm not exactly sure that you made many of them, who would be the them, far from you. And you sent ambassadors. I think what he's saying here is he sent them out to bring other people into these rites. And you sent presbytes, you can add that to your English derivatives book, 4244.1, same with the presbyter. You sent ambassadors, and that's what that means, an older person, elder, over hyper, your Oriah, Sue, horizon comes from that, over your borders. And you were abased unto Hades, and that is the netherworld. Basically, the things that they were doing was causing them to be finally killed and sent unto Adu, is the Greek pronunciation, and we have Hades in English, Adu. Hell, I believe, is in the King James. And this place of the netherworld, the place where the shades were in Greek mythology, where the spirit of the dead people were wandering around in this darkness, dingy place. You tired in your many ways of this going out and doing idolatry. Yet you said not, well, I shall cease growing in strength. Like you weren't sorry for it. You didn't see any negative. For you practice these things. They didn't even want to stop. They loved the idolatry that they were into for some reason. On account of this, you did not earnestly beseech me. Now, here we have you're in the singular. It changed back up here in 6 from the plural. That is your portion now, in 6. And it changes into the singular. And the singular above, only singular I could find that would fit would be a seed, the seed without honor. So that's your portion. And then he goes down. All these things are in the singular. And 7, and you elevate upon the high and elevated mountain, there is your bed. Kiti is a word that we have coitus, it's a sexual intercourse, comes from that, from your bed, and it was having sex, and there you shall be hauled, there you shall haul, you hauled your sacrifice, to sacrifice your sacrifices, and behind the doorposts, and we went to that the evil seed, and you loved the ones going to bed with you, and all these down, and you sent ambassadors and so forth. It's all singular, the seed, I believe. And you tired in your many ways. You said not, I shall cease, for you practice these things, the seed. And on account of this, singular you, did not earnestly beseech of me. In venerating, whom are you, this is the idol, in venerating, whom are you afraid of, that you lied against me, and did not remember me, nor took me into your consideration, nor into your heart? Whom were you afraid of? Were they afraid of the things of God? Why would people were chosen, like Israel, have left God and went to these idols? Well, the law was something that was set up by God, and they may not have liked the things of the law. They were restrictive to a certain point, where if you can go to follow a God that does not restrict you but gives you everything that you would like to do, overeat, take drugs, have sex, gamble, do whatever your heart's whatever you feel like doing in your heart, if that's the kind of God that you could find, well, it's like then the God of Israel, the Jehovah in the law, would be in competition with that. But yet, that's exactly what it was. And Jehovah fell out of favor and idolatry took over. And I, beholding you, will overlook, yet you did not fear me. Basically, he would have forgiven if they would have came to him for asking forgiveness. And it's still in the singular. And I will report, your righteousness and your evils shall not benefit you. Basically, with their idolatry, nothing is going to help because of their doing these evil things, even the righteous things that they did. Whenever you should yell out, then let them rescue you, singular, in your affliction, the seed. Let your idols rescue you, or whoever you go to get your advice from. I have a friend who goes to a psychiatrist and got really bad advice from a psychiatrist. So if things got really bad because of the bad advice, then God would want the person to come to him, but then again, he's almost saying, well, then if this is what you want and you don't want me, then go back to the psychiatrist and let him give you some more bad advice. For all these things the wind shall take, and the gale shall carry away. So when the person is living with the idolatrous practices, the evils that they're doing, the wind's going to take them away. It's going to cease. It's just temporary. God only allows this for a short period of time, to the people that are believers and have changed. And I believe a believer in Christ can walk away. And they do, and they're warned against doing that so many places by Jesus. But the ones holding on in me, now it changes here to the plural. But the ones holding on in me shall acquire the earth, and they shall inherit my holy mountain. Now, is he talking about Jerusalem? Possibly. Is he talking about the Jerusalem of Ezekiel, or is it 1,000 years, or the new Jerusalem that comes down from heaven? And they shall say, clear the ways from in front of him. Now we have a masculine singular. Clear the ways in front of him, and lift the impediment from the way of my people. So clear the ways from in front of him. So this person, this masculine person, singular, is coming. He's in a road, the ways, and lift any impediments from the way of my people, so that he basically can come. Now, who is the he? Well, we'll just have to read it and see if we can come up with a solution or a conclusion. Well, thus says the highest, which would be God, the one in the highest, dwelling the Aeona, the eon. Here it's a singular eon. Holy in the holies. The name to him, the Lord. Kyrios. And it's interesting, this is what they called Jesus, the Lord, the Kyrios, Jesus, Christos. And He's the one resting highest in the holies. So God is in the holies, the highest, way further. We can't even imagine. If you start to imagine, it just turns into poof, because your mind just can't go towards what God is. Just, we can't do it. It's an impossibility. Somebody that spends their time trying to understand God, trying to figure it out, there's this one, Dave, I forgot his name. He's a physicist. He's in a wheelchair and crippled. He's always trying to come up with how the world began. I would think that would be very frustrating, because there are so many things. If a human mind is really trying to spend your mind trying to figure the things of the highest, the one resting in the highest, how far can you go? Even if you're the smartest person in the world, if this person may claim to be, or others may claim him to be, and can use math and a lot of reasoning, that people would say, well, then he must know what he's talking about. But then again, does he really? I would think that person would be very frustrated in doing that kind of study. Whenever I start thinking about how far out the heavens go, and I mean, going out to black holes and all these things, it's like, whoa, I have no interest in doing that. It's just frustration. It's like when I go into a giant library, especially like the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., and you see all these thousands and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of books, and all the knowledge of the world, and it makes you like, one book, I don't know even what it could be talking about. Can't even understand one book in physics or biology. So this is what happens when we try to understand the highest, the one resting in the holies. And to the faint-hearted, giving long suffering. So somebody that is faint-hearted, oligopsychis is the Greek word. Oligo is a few, a life, psychos, giving long suffering, and giving life to the ones being broken in heart. Now, who could that be talking about? Well, in Luke 4:18, it says, Jesus says, it's quotation actually, a Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because of which he anointed me to announce good news to the poor. He has sent me to heal the ones being broken in heart. So I believe this is Jesus. Then it continues and it says, God says, I shall not punish you into the eon, and you now is plural. Nor shall I be provoked to anger with you, plural. So the people that were the lawless sons, I think, is what he's talking about here. For a spirit from me shall go forth, and I made all breath. The pneuma is a spirit. We know that Jesus mentions a spirit being sent. And this is what it's talking about, going forth in a power that had not happened before. And so I believe that Isaiah is talking about a future time of the Spirit being sent forth, go forth. And I made all breath. Breath is what the early church experienced in the room, where the pnoin, the breath, sat upon their heads in a form of a tongue of fire. So I believe that's what it's talking about in Acts. On account of sin, a little in anything I grieved him. Now, who is the him here? I believe it's talking about Jesus, because it says in the roll of the scroll, it has been written concerning me, and that's in Hebrews 10:7. And on account of sin, not his sin, a little in everything I grieved him. Jesus was grieved because of the sin of man. And I struck him, he was struck, and I turned my face from him. He allowed him to be crucified. And I was grieved, the Father, and he went gloomy in his ways. And we know that Jesus was gloomy. Darkness came upon him when he was in the garden. He was sweating drops of blood. I have seen his ways, and Jesus talks about he is the way, and I healed him and comforted him and healing him be the resurrection, and comforted him and gave to him true comfort. I believe it's talking about Jesus there. But now it changes to the plural. Peace upon peace to the ones far off, makron, macro, far off, and to the ones being near. Peace, Irene. Peace, Irene is the derivative, and shalom in Hebrew. And the Lord said, I will heal them. But the unjust thus shall swell as waves, and that's a term, the swelling of a wave. Of the waves, a swell was not the wave crashing, but in between, the wave going up. When you're in a sailboat, which I had for years, and I was sailing in the ocean, you would have swells, and a swell would go up, and the boat would go up into the swell, and sometimes if it was stormy or something, it would crash over, and you'd see what we call them whitecaps, and the whitecaps would crash over, and the wave wasn't really a wave until it hit the beach, where it turns into a curl where the surfers go on. But in the ocean, without the whitecaps, then you have a swelling throughout the whole ocean. So when you're sailing, sometimes there's no swell. I've seen it when I was sailing on the ocean. It was flat as glass. It's like you could get out and walk on it, see your reflection. But then most of the time there was a swell of the ocean pulsating, and your boat would go up and then it would go down. This is what makes people seasick, is the swell. But the unjust thus shall swell, and they will not be able to rest. And I should have had not I, but they, sonte. So you can correct your Bible, and I need to correct mine. There is not a there is not a rejoicing to the impious ones, said Theos, God. So the things of God, interesting chapter. It describes Christ in it, and the portion of the idolaters and the unjust. Chapter 58, our next chapter, the Lord's chosen fast and the Sabbath, and we'll go more into the Sabbath and into the fast. Hope you'll join us in chapter 58, and God bless.